Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. It's another week. What's up, Didi?
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. Just came back from Michigan, so I'm very grateful that I'm here. In nice and warm Massachusetts.
It is nice, actually.
Nice and warm Massachusetts.
We have a really nice fall, and I hope we're going to have a nice
chill winter.
Warm winter. Yeah. You know, it's interesting how our son Omri turned from being like the kid that doesn't give an F and like doesn't care about what people think about him. And now he's a freshman, high school freshman. He's like the most compliant kid, wanting to be.
He's like Katie in Mean Girls. He's exactly Katie in Mean Girls. He's having the experience of needing to adjust and understanding that he's not the popular girl and he needs to be friends with the popular girl to be popular versus the just don't give a fuck.
It's so interesting because like he's a third child. The first two really don't care about all the high school drama, while he is the most into it.
But he's a drama queen.
Buying the right shoes and checking them online, and like he has to have he wants to go to a specific hairdresser because he thinks the barber store in the end of the street doesn't do a good job with his haircut.
I'll do the shaving his head with the thing I shave my balls with again. I think this is the right way to deal with him.
This is TMI. I think even for our audience.
Nothing on this show is TMI.
But yeah. Yeah, so he's like into fashion and like what he wears and he cares about that. It's weird. Like we turned the kid that used to wear the same Let's Hang shirt for like forever, or we'd go with the Brady shirt for like
a year.
I think we have like 4 school photos of him where, I mean, those are not the same shirts because he grew. His size grew, but we had to get him the Brady 12 shirts.
Yep.
And then, now he's like thinking of what he's wearing.
That's because
and he takes care of that. And, he wanted he wanted the perfume and all the cologne and stuff. That's like really awareness. Well, maybe he will be dating somebody. That would be great. Please take him. Yes. Whoever.
Please take him.
A girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever. Like,
we're good with whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
We're good with whatever.
Exactly.
Just take him.
Let's have him like go dating.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we wanted today to continue a conversation about identity is security and do a second episode on the topic. Well, you're just back from meeting with your duo Fox.
Yep.
What is your current take? And you're going to Gartner IEM in 2 weeks' time. What's trending?
So from my perspective, the things that matter to me the most is SCIM and shared signals. But you were also talking about policy. So I think we can do a twofer here a little bit.
Yeah, let's get into that.
I'll start with the shared signals and SCIM, and then we'll discuss why people don't do policy, even though
it's very helpful and you should.
You should.
And let's talk about how.
And nobody does it.
Okay.
So what is shared signals? I think our industry on the threat detection side of the house had Taxi and Sticks and a lot of
Sticks and
Taxi for a very long time because everybody understood that the bad guys collaborate and maybe the good guys should collaborate as well. So
basically threat intel sharing of IOCs and TTPs.
IOC is indication of compromise. It's it's how
Basically, the methodology is how attackers get in and what's the signals they leave.
Yes, let's explain these two.
Okay.
So what is IOC, dear marketing lady that came from Cyber Reason?
Basically, those signatures of that the attackers leave behind if they're coming through specific IPs, or like the signatures of the malware. So all the basically the little crumbs they leave behind that are good signatures to show that this is malicious activity.
And remind me, what is TTP? I know what it is, but
TTP, I'm forgetting what's the acronym, but it's basically a more generalized. If IOC are really the specific breadcrumbs, those are the IPs. TTPs are more like methodologies that they used. They came in through this and this vehicle, and then they jumped from this machine, so lateral movement in that way. So it's more a broader behavioral versus signal based.
Yes. So and when we talk about shared signals in the identity space, there isn't one, and it's also not as trivial as OS. So in OS space, if I get compromised, I would look for IP addresses. I look for user agent strings. And we do need to share those as well.
You look for what's the malware, what's the exit file, what does it have as a signature, and you're going to share that.
Yes. Yeah. And you'll say that a certain package of a certain, and when you do vulnerability management, you basically say that if you have this package, it's exposed to these CVEs, and it allows you to basically know what's the right level to patch and things like that. In user space, it's much, much, much harder because a lot of things are low and slow. Like one of the continuous conversations I'm having with almost everybody is I tell people, what is the single event that you would change a user threat profile for a single event? And I have yet to see anybody that actually understands anything with the threat landscape. It's surprising because they confuse, to the tail end of our topic, policy. So somebody says, well, somebody showed up from Japan. And I said, okay, that's policy. That's not threat. Threat means that they did something that is dangerous versus they violate policy. So that's an important element to distinguish between. And shared signals is now a standard of basically how to wire up services. App Omni is part of this. Okta is part of this. Duo is part of this. Duo is one of the leaders in this. My peer, Nancy.
So what type of signals are being shared?
So this is the interesting thing. In shared signals, right now, there is no good definition of the payload of what's to be shared. They just cleaned up the mechanics of how do how do you create the message bus between the various identity services that allows them to talk to each other. It's basically how to do webhooks, how to authenticate to those webhooks, how to build. It's basically how to build the highway.
Basically an API kind of way to communicate between vendors.
Exactly, but they have not specified exactly the payload.
What will be shared?
There is a definition of what is to be shared. It's compromised users. It's compromised IPs. It is methods of attack, very much like that, to share payloads of attack of certain steps that happened. But the payloads themselves are kind of weak. And I'll give you the best example of why they're weak. OCSF, which is the standard right now for payloads in detection space. So if we were talking about sticks and taxi that give you the IOCs and TTPs, OCSF is kind of the data model that defines a lot of the aspects of threat detection in devices and applications and payloads. That doesn't exist in users. It just doesn't. I'm looking for people to pick this up. If you're listening to this podcast, maybe you should care about this. But things like our conversations with our friend Aaron from NameTag, I would like to know that somebody's credentials have been compromised, or something else. It could be a positive that I just verified Lital and
She's good to go.
she's good to go, rather than to try to build these things. And it's also important, I think, if you're a startup, to build through this mechanism right now, mainly because I think, and this is an important aspect, is the identity space is collapsing. There will be acquisitions.
Sure.
One of the things that was most painful for us as Ort going into Cisco Identity Intelligence, being Cisco Identity Intelligence, is that every one of our integrating targets decided to invent their own APIs. And that's a disaster. That's a painful disaster, because I don't want to build 16 different APIs. I want to build one API, one API to rule them all.
Yep.
And this gives us time to be opinionated for identity intelligence, for beyond identity. We need to be opinionated. Okta's picking up this element. There's a guy in Boston that you and I need to talk to named Tim that works for Okta on the standards part. And maybe I'll bring Shane from our side. And we can discuss the payloads and the standards, but this is the stuff that is interesting. Okta is trying to lead this, and they're doing an job at this. They're trying to create a standard called IPSI, which basically, if you look at almost all the identity standards, you'll see that everything is a should. Like SCIM is very loosely defined. OpenID Connect is very loosely defined. SAML is not loosely defined, but everything else is kind of loosely defined. Nobody defines how the JOT tokens are supposed to look like. Nobody has decided how to share AMRs. This is another thing that I would love to do as a shared signal, is if you MFA'd in one system, that I don't need to MFA 5 times with each IDP with each policy. I would love for the IDPs to be able to say, you know what, I verified Lital. This is the signature. If she shows you this signal, trust her. This would be really awesome.
Especially when organizations have multiple IDPs, and big organizations do have that.
All organizations have that problem. So these are things that I would love to be in shared signals. IPSI is the profile that says if you're implementing OpenID Connect, if you're implementing SCIM, if you're implementing shared signals, this is your musts. These are the things that you must do versus the things that you should do, which makes the standards useful.
Okay.
And I think you and I were talking about shared signals a little bit of, is this something that's useful, not useful? I think it will start becoming more of a requirement from vendors. Especially they'll say, you know what, just make sure that you play with the ecosystem, because we want to know that you're part of the ecosystem.
I think it will be critical in, organization needs to be able to accelerate incident investigation, incident response. If you have like shared signals, you have this, you can easily accelerate it, that's a good thing always, I think, It's a similar like the endpoint industry, moved virus total. You had all those shared signatures at the time. All industries kind of like go through that.
It's an indication of maturity.
It is an indication of maturity to be able to have that. It's not just about you, one vendor making it up, but there is, as we said, a full ecosystem. You can learn from it. Everybody in the endpoint space, go through virus total, contribute, and, use the data. So, that's like going open source in a way.
Yes.
Is always important for overall improving everyone's experience and, improving security.
Yeah. And if you look at the two standards, the SAML and the OpenID Connect, they've changed significantly the fact that
I think it was more for ease of use, right? That all applications could be connected to your SSO easily.
No, it was for security.
Okay.
It was for security. And this opened up single sign-on into being really single sign-on.
Right.
And I think this will open up security to identity to become part of security, because once you understand that you are security and not an IT tool, you learn that you need to share signals, you need to share data. You need to be able to alert threat. You need to be able to escalate threat. And you need to do this in a timely fashion, which is also an important thing because everybody says, I want real time. Humans don't work in real time. It's not machines. A timely fashion is actually a time that you can respond. Like people were talking about how fast you need to make sure that your MFA mechanism works, blah, blah, blah. But think of how long it takes you to reach out and touch your phone, or how long it takes you to do something. In human mechanics, time, seconds or minutes is, it's still acceptable and it changes your ability to be able to be accurate. And that's another important, when you think of identity security and the importance of this framework, is to think of the fact that in machine aspect, there isn't a lot of risk of doing something wrong. Locking out your CEO is a career limiting move.
Yeah.
And that opens up our discussion about policy. I think faster than I wanted to. I wanted to also talk about SCIM, but I'm guessing we're probably going to do an episode just on SCIM at another point in time. But
so let me open this topic of move to this point of policy. I'll shamelessly plugging my company Beyond Identity, and I think one of the things we do best, really, we're really good at the core of the product. Beyond the passwordless and then phish resistance MFA, that's kind of like the table stake of being in the market. The tech is extremely good with building extremely fine-grained, clear policies that you can test, that you can go through. And the interesting conversation we are having with some customers is, why don't you implement them? Like, you really have this powerful ability that, in my humble view, can help you move from, it's a highway, it's a tool, gives you some protection, to really giving you powerful protection, being able to prevent, protect, or at least absorb if you don't put a policy of like, let's block a user from authenticating, but let's say just take a note that it happens, just report to your SOC that it happened. So you have a record of this. It's a very powerful tool, especially when you can start integrating it with other tools and with other signals coming from your VPN, who is connecting from whom, information from your own machine. We talked about device trust last time and everything about the state of your machine, all the way to your EDR and whatever, your Zscalers and so on and so forth, kind of like putting authentication signals together with other things. So policy, or the ability to write fine-grained policy, is extremely powerful, and it can be the way to actually make organization, give them the ability to protect themselves. Because I think for over a decade, the pervasive experience is breach is inevitable. They will come in one way, somebody will get phished, somebody will click the link, something will happen. And we need to be in this post-breach, assuming we will be pawned. And we just need to have strong detection and be able to detect as soon as possible. Time to detect, time to investigate, time to respond. SOC is the hero. Having stronger security policy, and we can talk about all the other policy that are for compliance, for other use cases.
We have an episode about compliance and security.
Which is also extremely important. I think it's powerful to just check the boxes through policy, and that's a wonderful use case that you should consider. You can easily comply with a lot of like SOC 2 NIST just through that, and easier than other tools, or getting reporting and stuff. So what are your thoughts? What would make people actually use policy more? What are we getting wrong if it's not being used that often? Is it locking your CEO in the middle of his presentation, that because of that nobody uses it? What are you thinking about
It's more complicated. So when I'll plug this later on, there's the part in Minions where the Kevin tries to break the board, and then the other guy comes and says, Kevin, and takes his head and tries to bang it. his head to bang through the board. One of the things that I've learned about this, you're so idealistic, it's so funny. It's not just that. It's that the policies that the organization has are policies that people can't live with. I'll give you the best example.
They cannot live with.
They cannot live with.
Okay.
Can't live. Yes. People can't live with those policies. And I'll give you the best example.
Yep.
What policy in the world is the dumbest policy ever? Sarbanes-Oxley. Nothing is dumber than Sarbanes-Oxley. It was meant to prevent the Enrons. We had 5 Enrons since Enron, but we file so much bullshit and paper to make everybody feel happy that it's so useless. One of these aspects of this stupidity is something called span of control. So, for example, who approves this budget and does something like this? And all stupid companies, and that's why you'll see almost every place that we come in, we see that all the executives share credentials with their admins and things like that, because they need their, you can't expect the CEO, you can't expect the CISO, you can't expect VP levels in the organization, for example, our size, to manually go in and approve every request. Otherwise,
they were not going to do anything else.
They'll
other
do
than
nothing else.
Yeah.
When I need to approve my requests, if Nitzan and
they need to
we don't call and yell at me,
nug you to go do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you forget about it.
It's not that I forget about it. It's like sitting for an hour and rubber stamping bullshit that I will never understand, because I have a team that actually knows what they're doing. And I'm a highly technical executive, and I know what I'm doing. And in most of the time, I negotiate and read some of the proposals. But still, if I will sit and just deal with my stupid approvals for all the stuff that is budgetary related to me, this is like a day in my week, a whole day of my week. So almost everybody shares their credentials with their admins, so their admins will do this. And this is a big security threat. But the problem of this is that you have a policy in place, because people said, well, the tools don't support it. Now Concur and Ariba and all these things support Delegation.
Yeah.
Delegation. They allow you to not
be the signatory.
Not to share to not need to share the credentials. But
Right.
nobody's implementing this because the corporate policies, the financial policies in the industries that we live in are stupid. And because of that, you're stuck doing things the wrong way identity-wise. So you need to understand where your security policy and your financial policies don't align, and what to do to solve this in terms of the organization. The organization needs to understand from the CEO down that you can't put down a policy that
doesn't make sense and will not be implemented.
Yes, the aspect of security, the fact that you're getting financial compliance, you're compromising on security compliance. Now you need to make the decision business-wise. Are you willing to basically steal from Peter to give to Paul?
Okay.
And that's the biggest problem that we've seen in almost every organization.
It's also, it's two contradicting policies, compliance that are dealt with different organizations. And,
Yep.
do you want the CFO to go fight with the CISO over that? Like, CFO will win at the end of the day. Financial compliance is probably willing.
So this is something that is an education battle that people don't spend time on. You need for the policy tools, for our policy tools to work, they need first the organization policy to work. My constant argument with Matt and some of the others is everybody says, we need to build a workflow tool into our tools. I say, no, you don't. And they say, why? Well, it's really cool. I said, no, somebody already has ServiceNow or Jira or Slack. You have one of those three things. And some companies that will implement some workflow on top of GitHub with GitHub Project, or maybe Asana, or maybe Monday. Doesn't matter. One of those, you have one of those tools. They already have your organization policy implemented there. Our security tools need to be able to read the policies that are there and implement the security policy that's relevant to what the workflow policies in the organizations are, or highlight that the organization workflows are broken security-wise.
I think I can translate the way I'm thinking about that.
That was a mouthful, but if you think about it, if the tool that you have built, you're making somebody copy a policy that they already have in documents into another place, and it's not clear how to do the translation, they can't live with it.
So I think one of the things that prevent, and maybe it's what you are kind of discussing here, but from a different angle, is it starts with like, do you have the knowledge of what processes really happen, and what does it mean that you will intervene with some sort of policy that may enforce that somebody will not be able to authenticate because of a certain reason? So I think it's tough sitting in an identity team and, you know, thinking of all those exact use cases that you're talking about, which are business use cases that are kind of HR use cases, and, you know, making decision on a security posture risk that some activities impose. Sometimes you're first not aware of those use cases at all. Like, you're not aware that, you know, this team travels to Asia regularly because they need to do X, Y, Z. And if you block them, and they will have these weird activities looking like that because that's what they're doing. Maybe you're an organization that have it. So I think there is a level of, to be able to do policy, I think you need to have strong level of understanding of your organizational behavior. And so,
you know, why am I smiling?
Because you built a tool that will look at that,
Yes.
which I think that's really, I think in the world of today, when you have agents, tools like yours, and so you don't need human beings that will be pervasive and, you know, document people are doing that, people are traveling that. You know, that is where really all kinds of tech agents, AI tools and stuff can actually first look and observe.
Yes.
And I think that is the thing. Observing first before you actually implement everything about, and then being able to interpret what is it. And I think this is where maybe it goes to the next level. Maybe some of it is automated, but some of it is a business discussion.
This was the failure of UEBA. So what UEBA tried to
say it's abnormal, bad.
Bad, exactly. It's not abnormal, bad. Abnormal, good is not a good idea.
Right.
You need to first.
It's not about abnormality. It's about risk.
It's about the gap between observed and policy, and what needs to change. The policy or the observed, because sometimes there are things that you need to take a look at and understand if the policy that you have in place organizationally is the right one. Because if it is driving business, then we need to find a security control that deals with this. I'll give you a best example of not understanding and lack of control and lack of understanding of how to map of things. Okta, when they roll out OIE, they forgot that they had...
What is OIE?
It's their modern version. It's basically Okta V2.
Okay.
It's called Okta Identity Engine, but who cares? It's a marketing...
Whatever.
It's a marketing name.
Okay. When they upgraded to...
Blah, blah. It's a breaking upgrade. that really got everybody loving them even more. Besides the price gouging and a few other things, it made them love them even less. But the idea was that they changed the way that they did per app policy. In the previous tool, you could have had a policy, authentication policy per application. I could say at the application level, what is the right level of controls that you can do? OIE limited that and said, you know what, you can have about 20, 30 policies, generally. And you need to group the applications on the policies. But apparently, a shitload of organizations had a per app policy because they delegated the app access to the app owners.
Yep.
Which probably is what needed to happen.
Yeah, because they know what is it being used. Like the guy that is like the corporate identity guy doesn't necessarily know who are the users, what are they doing with the app, what's okayed and what shouldn't be okayed.
And I'll give you another example. If I'm an organization of 5,000 employees, how many applications usually will I have?
A lot.
Give a number.
10,000. I don't know. Just making it up. 2 per person.
It's not, but it's usually one per person.
1 per person. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Long tail of stuff.
Exactly, because there's some things that 3 employees work on. And
I mean, then depends how old your company is. You'll have all the heritage stuff that you churned, but still have some access to.
But somebody is doing this for one day a year.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody got access to whatever and forgot.
Yes. So this is a lot of the thing that people don't realize when we talk about the policy is policy needs to be distributed and delegated. And that's the other element of this. And the tools that we have right now are very powerful, but they're not thinking of that long tail. And because of that, you end up with generic rules.
I think that's the problem. I mean, it's just complex. It's work. And there is a long tail if you really want to get to all this. So maybe you just do, kind of like top 10, as you say, broadest ones, impossible trouble, those kind of things. I don't know, whatever people care about this.
What you need to do is you need to put policies in place based on understanding of people's possible impact.
Okay.
And this is something and everything needs to be automated. So one of my continuous arguments with Josefa, one of our PMs, she says, people want to enter stuff. And I said, people are stupid. So, as you know, rules of Didi. Everybody lies. As we learned from Dr. House, everybody lies. Even when they don't mean to lie, everybody lies. The individual is smart, but people are stupid. That's we learned from Man in Black. And what happens when you combine those two things is everything that you enter in a system.
You cannot trust anything because...
You can't trust anything that is manually entered. Ever, 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 ever.
Okay.
You need to let people describe what they want to do and build a tool that's able to do this.
Automatically.
I'll give you the best example. Almost Microsoft has a group builder. And everybody uses Microsoft groups. Everybody. But there's like tons and tons and tons of tools that manage just groups, just in Microsoft. Each one is bad. Each one doesn't do the whole thing. And half of the organization have 3 of them. And still, Cisco has more groups than people, which makes no sense. EMC had 2 groups per person when we implemented Avexa. This gives you a sense that what happens is, I call it the Lital closet thing. You hoard, throw. Hoard, throw. And it's always defined by the capacity of how big the closet is. When we moved from Israel, we had like a small closet, and we got bigger closets when we moved to the US, and we really, really fast filled them up. Now we moved from a smaller house to a bigger house, and we still quickly fill them up. And that's not just us. Everybody does that.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with standards and groups and
it's
all
like
these.
It happens with, it's the same, like how you call this principle,
Yes.
the time. You will
Yes.
fill up the time. You're given time,
Parkinson.
the Parkinson law.
That if you give it 30 minutes, it will take 30 minutes.
If you give it 10 days, it will take you 10 days.
Exactly.
Exactly. You will fill, human beings will fill up the time they have to do the job.
Exactly. So it's very much the same. It's very much the same thing.
So you will fill up the room with more policies.
We'll give them another tool. They'll think that they'll do a good job of managing it, then we'll create yet another problem. So
Okay.
this is my thoughts of this needs to be automated, because if it's not automated, it just doesn't happen. And it needs to be where the policymakers actually reside, and it's never in IT.
Awesome things to think about.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Any other
Are you
thoughts?
building more automations around those?
Of course
things?
I am.
That's your tools.
Of course, because I'm a big believer in don't listen to the words coming out of people's mouth. Observe what they do. And your tool needs to observe what they do and adjust to it. Don't listen to what they say. In customer meetings, I never ask, what's your problem and what you want? They will always, I say, what do you do today? How do you do this today? When we built Device Insights, one of the things that was most helpful, I said, I don't want to hear the words. Give me the Excel files that you use to manage all the devices.
You want to look the data.
Exactly. Give me the Excel files that you manage the device today. I'll understand what you actually want.
Cool.
Cool. And by the way, it's not that I mean that the usual thing of Henry Ford has a very famous saying of if he would have listened to the customers, they wanted the faster horse, and he
Sure.
gave them a car. I don't believe in this. Most of the time, they actually need a faster horse, but they will describe an aspirational.
They can describe the pain. You can interpret it and, give them what they want, or think of innovative,
First, you look at what they do.
quantum leap solution that actually solves the problem and not just
Yes.
incrementally improves it. That's the thing. It
just-
is important to listen to what's the pain. They hate slow horses. Also, there is the shit problem and all those kind of things. So once you can, yes, incrementally improve it, giving, I don't know, the horse some shoes or whatever.
But in reality, in high tech, what happens is that we always have that saying, but in reality, when you talk to the customers, they don't ask for a faster horse. They actually need a faster horse, but what they ask for is a helicopter that consumes $12 of gas a year and flies through walls. And they never actually describe what they need. They give you a whole list of aspirational things that have nothing to do with reality.
Mentioning the horse shit reminded me.
About the cat shit?
No, we actually gonna end up the episode with that. You remember that in Ireland when we took this way up and horses with carriages, and we were wondering about how come the road is full of
Horse shit.
and she and our tour guide explained that they do usually have those cans that collect it
The
while
horse diaper.
yes, but the horse riders,
jockeys, yes.
they are on a strike because
They
they're being
didn't want to
asked
share.
to.
They didn't want to share the road with the cars.
They didn't want to share a road with cars. They let them now share it. So their strike is that they don't put the horse diapers and the horse are shitting on the road.
Yes.
So we hate strikes. It's horse shit.
Exactly.
Has nothing to do with the episode, but I thought you mentioned horses. So
Yes.
it's always a good anecdote to bring this in. Awesome. Well, I think we talked a lot. We have more to cover in identity security. That was episode number 2 on the topic. I hope we enlightened you. The Didi and Lital Show is a weekly podcast. If you like us, please rate and review us wherever you're getting it. If you want to be on the show, reach out to Didi or to myself. If you're in identity, tell us what you're working on. If you're in security, tell us what you're working on. And in general, we'll be here next week. Thank you so much.
Thank
See
you
ya.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.